This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it's Wednesday. It's September 27th, 2023. Thank you for joining us. We're broadcasting every weekday on thetruthcentral.com. That's thetruthcentral.com. Be sure to put the in there, thetruthcentral.com. First story I want to cover today has to do with these looters in Pennsylvania, another Democratic hellhole. We're descending into anarchy. I mean, when you have Antifa destroying Portland, Oregon in 2020 election cycle, nobody does anything about it. Nobody gets arrested. When you've got San Francisco and other Democratic hellholes all boarding up with the retail stores leaving. And what happened in Philadelphia last night is another indication of just how our cities are becoming unlivable, unmanageable. This was essentially a riot that broke out. I mean, the looters started ransacking stores in Philadelphia. We're going to show you a video of it in a minute. I'll describe the video for those listening on audio. A lot of juveniles, these gangs, all masked up and everything, came in and they started terrorizing several sections of Philadelphia. It was an 8-hour spree. It seemed coordinated, and they were breaking into stores and looting, just stealing everything. The police swarmed over. This is really right downtown, Walnut Street, between 15th and 18th Street, right pretty much downtown. And the videos posted to X, Twitter, showed all kinds of stores, the Apple Store, Foot Locker, just being ransacked in a coordinated attack. There was no way the police could stop it. I mean, this went on for hours, and I think right now Philadelphia is probably still locked down. This is in the center city. These looters are in the main stores of the center city, just breaking windows, coming in, stealing everything. And Chris, why don't we play the video? I'll describe it as you're showing it, but it's pretty shocking, this video. Take a look at it. It starts out with the police struggling. They're fighting with, you can hear the screaming and this bizarre laughter here. The police are dragging these looters out, and they're holding them down in the streets. Police are actually beating these people. The police are furious with these guys. Somebody in a mask runs out of the store. And this is chaos. This is absolute chaos. And you can look behind them all the way up the street. The entire street was looted. This is insanity. This is complete insanity. It's chaos. The police are not in control. And as it calms down for a minute, then more looting occurs. And they're showing now an Apple store. They're in an Apple store. They're coming out with, look, I've got all these cell phones. And okay, so they think this is just chaos. Somebody's just stuffing things into a car. Okay, so that's the end of the video. I mean, this went on. There's a lot of YouTube I guess it must be YouTube, but it's certainly Twitter's posting a lot, or X is posting a lot of videos showing the chaos in Philadelphia. It's a Democratic-run city, and they've gone through 2 or 3. First of all, they let Antifa destroy Portland, Oregon, so that's an example for everybody. We had the George Floyd riots, which were, promoted by the mainstream media. They learned how to destroy cities all over the country, and then now the looters have just taken over. Now the criminal gangs have come in. These youth gangs, which have been roaming in cities now for months, but now they've gone to a new level because they're breaking into stores and they're looting. The response to this is that the stores will simply shut down. Stores shut down, the economic activity of the city diminishes because the city is going to get fewer tax dollars, and the whole thing is a downward spiral. So this is a death spiral. If we're going to have violent gangs roaming our cities, people aren't going to want to live in the cities. The downtowns are going to be abandoned. I mean, this is absolute chaos. And when you defund the police, decriminalize the jails, let everybody out, have all the forces of chaos are going to reign. And it's going to be impossible to be safe in the downtown areas. Police are not going to be able to maintain order. They're not going to be able to respond to 9/11 calls. People are going to be dying because of this. And the stores are simply going to fold up and quit. They're not going to do it. They're not going to be having no police protection, vulnerable for their employees at any hour of the day or night, broken into, and no one can do anything about it because these mobs are violent. They come in and beat up the store employees. They terrorize the entire city. And if this is the kind of chaos we're going to have in America, if this is the United States of America under this Biden, who looks demented, and Menendez, who's also bribery, federal government is packed with government officials who are on the take. They are only there to make money. They know they can sell their offices for money. And Biden has sold his office to China. He sold it to the Ukrainian oligarchs. And the Justice Department does nothing. Well, there's no law enforcement that's going to enforce the laws. Criminals will reign. They'll be in charge. We'll be in a criminal society. And there'll be no safety. There'll be no order. There'll be no productive activity. This is the kind of chaos the Democrats are reigning, and I think it's frightening. I want to combine it with one more story that I'm going to ask Chris to comment on this. But the second story I want to cover today, it's related, is this Jamie Dimon story. Jamie Dimon's off giving a conference, and he did a report, I believe, in India that was picked up pretty much internationally. And what he is saying is that he's issuing a warning, is what he's doing. He's saying that we are not going to be able to tolerate if we go to 7% interest, which the Fed is probably going to do. And he said, we're not prepared for it. It's going to be a worst case scenario for the economy, and it's coming. Now, when Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, if he comes forward and saying this, he's sending a shot across the bow of the Fed. He's saying, if you guys continue to do what you said you were going to do at this last meeting, where the Fed said, well, we're not going to raise rates today, but we're going to continue raising rates. Well, rates are now at 5.5%. Rates have gone up dramatically. They were at 0 under Obama when the Fed was trying to prop up his failing economy by low interest. But now we're at about between 5.5 and 5.75%. So 30-year fixed mortgages are already at 7%. And what Jamie Dimon is saying is that if rates go as high as 7%, this is a crisis. This is a break stuff, is what he's saying. In economic sense, it's going to break the economy. Now, Jamie Dimon's on track here, because we have had a debt during the pandemic. The federal government learned just to spend money and give it to people. Lock them up in the house, give them money, and let Uber, deliver their food, or whoever wants to deliver their food, DoorDash or any one of these others. They can stay in their homes. We'll bring things to them. Federal Express, everybody brings things to them. So the problem is they didn't quit spending money. That once the federal government learned it could just spend money like crazy, we're going to give another $20 billion to Ukraine. Well, no one's accounting for that money. There's so much money floating around, it's all printed money. Now, what Jamie Dimon is pointing out, and Steve Stockman, who was one of the economic directors under Reagan, is saying the economy runs when people have savings. That's the traditional idea. People save money. The banks lend money. The banks are creating money by lending money. That's the money creation function of banks. Fundamental Economics 101, which, by the way, is not being taught in the schools anymore. Most people listening to this probably never had an economics course, a really deep understanding of economics in terms of the classical way it works. Now we've got this new modern monetary theory, which says just print money. Well, since it's fiat money, we can pay off the national debt with newly printed money. Well, that's a formula for hyperinflation, because they'll never tax. If they did tax, they would shut down the entire economy for the amount that they're spending to take demand out of the economy. but no real money creation is going on. This is just fluff money, and it's easily stolen because it's not being accounted for. You don't think Hunter Biden and Joe Biden can figure out a way to take their billion? Of course they can. Biden, when he was vice president working with Ukraine and his son, they passed legislation to buoy up the Ukrainian natural gas industry, and it largely disappeared. Money was given to Ukraine from the World Bank. It largely disappeared. No, it didn't disappear. It got taken by the oligarchs and put in their bank accounts in Cyprus. They money laundered that, right gone. Well, they're good at that. And no one did anything. They weren't caught. Now, if we go into a criminal society, and I caught HSBC years ago when John Cruz, who was a banker at that time in Long Island, brought me accounts where what the bank was doing is setting up accounts in your name and your social security number. They were running millions of dollars through that account, and they closed it. So the account had no balance in it, and there was no income tax to report because it was just a pass-through. But that laundered the money. It went into a fictitious account under your real social security number and went to somewhere, who knows where it went. You'd have to get forensic accounting to find that out. Well, the federal government can figure it out, but the problem is we are in the drug business. The federal government is the drug cartel. You cannot run a drug cartel without a bank. What do you do? Drive semi trucks full of $100 bills around? You can't do it. You got to get the money into the banking system, make it digital, and then you can use it. You can move it around, hide it. That's what criminals do. And we're running a criminal system that is penetrated into the government. NSA is collecting all this data on everybody. The Mueller investigation, when they wanted to put me in prison for lying, they never indicted me. They gave me a plea deal. I refused to take it. I knew they were the criminals. They were lying. There was no Russian collusion. That's now proven. They said they could watch the keystrokes of my computer as I wrote an article and watch where I was browsing. Well, if they can do that, they can tell where the money is going in the electronic system down to the penny if they wanted to track it. They don't want to track it because they're allowing virtually every major bank in the world is one way or another at some time or other involved in criminal activities. It's lucrative. They can charge more for it. And occasionally the banks get caught. Then they pay a fine. Nobody goes to prison. If we're in a lawless, non-accountable society, and Chris, I want you to show, we've got some things now. I'm insisting that you get a copy of this free book. I mean, I see that Steve Stockman has also got a book similar to mine, in which he's talking about the money bubble, which is essentially what I'm talking about. I'm saying here in this, the historic crash is coming. Jamie Dimon saying it now. We're going to have a gold rush. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. You get a free copy of this book from Swiss America. Just call 800-519-6268. And you get a free copy of the book. They'll mail it to you. Swiss America. I'll repeat that number for everybody in audio and the like. 800-519-6268. 800-519-6268. Get a copy of the book. I also talk in here about cryptocurrency and the risks of cryptocurrency. Now, we're starting to post some of the podcasts that Swiss America is doing, and I'm encouraging everybody get some gold. Gold goes up dramatically in value. In 1980, when Reagan came in after the Jimmy Carter's fiasco, gold went to $843 an ounce. It's been at $35 an ounce. There's a lot posted here on the website, including videos. You can see some of on the right-hand side, we've got some of the Swiss America videos posted. There's a video in the stories, which is a secret war. Chris is showing you on the website where you can get it all. Gold is going to double and get in price. The collapse from COVID sent gold to $2,000 an ounce. Remember, in 1971, it was $35 an ounce. And gold, the central banks are hoarding it up now and buying it. Get your retirement plans and your 401ks in it. This book will explain to you another story that Swiss America is covering is all the major banks are going into cryptocurrency. They're all trying to digitize money and tokenize your bank accounts And what happens if you go in electronic online banking and your money's gone? That's happening around the world, around the country. And it takes the banks a while. They're not real anxious to replace that money. I mean, when you can't trust banks, you can't trust law enforcement because it's been in New York City, police are resigning by droves. Why should they? I go through New York City, used to say to the police how much we appreciate their service. Today, they're telling me no one says this to us anymore, Dr. Corsi. Nobody says this. They're so pleased to have somebody appreciate them. They're risking their lives. This is Dean's right here. That's the video, which Dean's talking about how the banks disappear your money. It can happen. And they're saying have something tangible, something of tangible value. People say, well, I can't eat gold. What am I going to do with gold? In the history of the world, if you've had some precious metals, that's one of the keys to survive. Even in desperate situations, the Jews going into concentration camps would put some gold or diamonds or something into their clothing, so they had something to barter, something of value to barter. And there will be ways in order to sell gold. And right now, you can sell gold as it appreciates in value. You can sell it and get more worthless dollars. Get twice as many worthless dollars as you paid for it. Go to the grocery store and see how little $100 buys today. One of my major themes in the show, and we're going to switch into the climate issues in a minute, is that there's a deliberate war going on to destroy the middle class. This is not accidental. This economic situation is caused by a group of people who want to destroy the dollar. And this is a neo-Marxism, which has pervaded our mainstream media, which has pervaded the bureaucracy. They think they can create a better world by destroying what's here. And my new book reveals this. The one it's coming out in October. It follows my book on climate. It looks the same way, same design of the cover, because it's the second volume of what I'm calling the Great Awakening series. And I'll write the third volume, hopefully starting it later this year. This is the truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. I'm saying that this Marxism that's pervading the university, the Marxism that's pervading our media, the Marxism we're being pounded on, and people don't realize they're being pounded with Marxism, is only capable of destroying. And it leads into anarchy, and you're seeing the anarchy today. As the book is being published, what I wrote about going back a year ago is happening. Chris, you want to comment?
Back in that first story with all the looters, I was looking at that video again behind the scenes, and I noticed at least most of them are wearing their masks. Fauci would be very happy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that's about as, yeah, they're all wearing their masks.
But we didn't need Jamie Dimon to tell us we're not going to be able to handle 7%, a 7% federal interest rate. Yes, I know some people are going to say, well, it was much higher before, back in the early 80s and late 70s. The fact is, though, we weren't looking at exorbitant real estate prices. One of the reasons why real estate went up so much is because interest rates were down, and I'm sure there was a vice versa somewhere along the line before.
It's a bubble. It's a bubble. It's a bubble. Another bubble. Salaries will burst.
Right. Real money, real salaries. The real money value of salaries are not going up. Inflation, food and energy is going up despite what they're telling you.
It's the purchasing power of your money.
Right.
That's the key issue. That's what inflation's all about. It's why gold preserves purchasing power, because gold accelerates in value when the economy goes south. That's the point. Don't look at your money as how many dollars you have. Look at your money as what's it going to buy. That's what your money is worth. That's where the rubber meets the road. What's your money worth? Okay, so your house is now worth $1 million when you bought it for $200,000. Oh, well, look at all the money I made. Yeah, well, sell that house and you go out to buy a replacement of it. It's going to cost you $1.2 million, because again, everything is inflated.
It'll cost more because the interest rates are up.
Well, the interest rates are up. You're going to pay a lot more mortgage. Your mortgage will double in price and cost. Well, if you're paying out a mortgage of $1,000, you'll be paying out $1,700 or $2,000 pretty soon. I mean, this is the problem with printing money. We are on a high. It's like a sugar high, and it eventually you come back down to normal, but you crash. Well, we're going to crash. And when we go back to Reagan, when we had the national debt was maybe 30% of our GDP. Today it's 120%. Our debt is 120% of our GDP. I mean, national debt is $33 trillion. Well, we don't have a $33 trillion economy. We've got less than that.
I am very tired of hearing President Biden and people on the left, sometimes some on the right, saying, "Oh, the deficit. We have to lower the deficit." And you hear Biden going, "My new plan is going to lower the deficit." But remember, he has this burst of anger. The deficit by. By the way, the deficit rose.
You're doing pretty good imitating Biden these days.
Well,
I
think.
think. Yeah, it's a good imitation.
If I fell asleep, it would be even better. But the deficit actually went up. But the people are so fixated on the deficit. It's the debt that matters.
It's the debt
that's
that matters.
Going way up.
Well, the deficit builds the debt. The deficit fuels the debt, and because the deficit ends up in the debt.
Right, but nobody says the costs of two major things have caused the debt to rise exponentially. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Obamacare, the Health Care Act, the expense of that, which actually rolled into the Trump administration, no one's going to be able to replace that because you can't take away entitlements.
Well, okay.
And the COVID spending.
Okay, both of those are correct. But see, also, in the federal budget, there's non-discretionary spending. Non-discretionary spending is what you have to spend on Social Security, Medicare, all these other programs. Now, Social Security is not an entitlement program because technically you've contributed to it and you get back your own money. But the problem is the federal government's been borrowing that money, and the Treasury right now, if you look at the Social Security bank, as it were, if there were a bank behind it, it's filled with debt of the Treasury. They've taken the money out and given it worthless notes of the Treasury as the assets of Social Security. So basically, we're fueling with paper. We're in the early stages of hyperinflation, and this is going to be a painful crash. I'm trying to warn everybody to take steps now today, and the steps today are anticipate that it's going to get worse economically. Let's move on. I want to cover a lot today. The next stories, I want to cover a couple stories here on the global warming hoax and all this nonsense we're being fed constantly about electric vehicles and the like. Stories are beginning to be written, and there's one I particularly picked up today, which is that this plant, the Panasonic Electric Vehicle battery factory, which is in Kansas, it is using up so much energy to produce these lithium batteries that they're going to have to. Kansas was just notified, the state was just notified that this Panasonic battery factory is going to require a coal-fired power plant that was scheduled to be closed to remain in operation just to provide the fuel for the electric vehicle battery factory. So in accordance with the regime, they're now saying Biden regime, their ongoing efforts to force Americans into an electric vehicle, Panasonic built this $4 billion EV battery factory in the small Kansas suburb of DeSoto. Okay, DeSoto used to be a brand of car. That's long gone. So the local reports are saying that the factory will require this huge amount of electricity to function. So on track to receive $8.6 billion from Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, more boondoggle money. What the Panasonic is now telling Kansas is you got to keep this coal-fired power plant going so we can make EVs. Now, if this isn't insanity, and of course, environmentalists are all enraged that a coal plant's going to have to remain open. Well, these electric vehicle batteries don't come from nothing. Okay, now, as the story details, a 16-pound lithium-ion battery holds about the same amount of energy as a pound of oil. Get that? Wrap your heads around that. I mean, it's like we were pointing out earlier. With energy, it's what's the energy charge you get out of something. It's measured in joules. It's a measure of how much energy there is here. It's a physics issue. Okay, so you get an EV, and it's a 15-pound a lithium battery. It just holds the same amount of energy as a pound of oil. Okay, now to make that battery requires 7,000 pounds of rock and dirt to get the minerals that go into that battery. And the average EV battery weighs 1,000 pounds. Now, this is nonsense. You're using up hydrocarbon fuels to do the mining. And you're producing this very heavy, expensive lithium battery that isn't as powerful as the gasoline, which was more easily extracted from the earth, didn't require all of this huge amount of mining, is not using up minerals that are precious minerals that are rare in the earth. It doesn't leave a worthless junk at the end when it rots or corrodes or catches fire. And it doesn't produce adequate energy. So the whole idea that EVs are producing green energy is nonsense. It's a fantasy. Okay, so all these ideas of the left don't work, and they weren't intended to work. I think one of the most important books, and it's totally overlooked, it's a very difficult book to read because if anybody's read a lot of this communist nonsense, it's very, very dense. This book right here, okay, it's by a guy named Saito. He's Japanese, and it's Marx in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is what they're calling, what the left is calling this era. Anthropos is the Greek word for human beings. What they're saying is we are our own cause of destruction. Human beings are the problem. We're the blight. So we need to get rid of human beings. Well, it also is saying that Marxism has adopted the green agenda to destroy capitalism. It's the new tool to destroy capitalism, based on convincing you with a hoax that carbon dioxide, which is emitted by hydrocarbon fuels when they're burned, is going to cause the earth to be too warm and we're all going to die. That's nonsense. I pointed out yesterday's podcast that it looks now like with the shift in the oceans, which is massive force, not just, carbon dioxide is 0.04% of the atmosphere. 70% of all greenhouse gases are water vapor. This is nonsense that you've been fed. Okay. And with the ocean currents changing right now, where you've got this El Nino current coming up, we are probably going to have a colder winter in the southern half of the United States, because that's just the nature of how the polar vortex is affected, how the wind patterns change, and how storms will come across. And remember, people, the earth has climate change built into it. It's called seasons: summer, fall, winter, spring. That's climate change. Why? Because the earth is tilted at an angle to its orbit. We go around in a circle, more or less, and our axis, the way we're revolving around, is as an angle to that orbit, which means sometimes the northern hemisphere is exposed to the sun and sometimes it's not exposed to the sun. When it's exposed to the sun, we call that summer. It's warmer. These aren't hard concepts. When we're pointed away from the sun, it's called winter. When the sun's orbit gets more elliptical, as it does about every 100,000 years, we have an ice age because we're farther away from the sun. Now, it's not hard to teach these concepts, but no one's doing it in the schools today because they're teaching Marxism. We exhale carbon dioxide. The left says we've got to kill cows. We can't eat meat because they fart methane. Well, we exhale carbon dioxide. Are the next going to say, let's kill people? Yes, they are. Let's go to the next story. This is Bill Gates, one of my least favorite human beings on the planet. Bill Gates is now on this theme that he's changed his tune a little bit. Why? Because he's realizing that where he's been, what he's been saying is a dead duck. Okay, so he wrote a book. Someone wrote a book for him. I'm going to pull it up here for a second. Somebody must have written this book for him. At any rate, he is abandoning this climate doom narrative. The whole thing about climate change is it's all predicated on doom. oh, there's going to be horrible hurricanes. There's going to be weather. The sea is going to rise. The polar bears are going to be gone. None of that's happened. It's all made up to scare you. And because we're not educated in the schools anymore, people aren't taught science, they are easily scared. Now, Gates authored this, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And he spent the last decade telling audiences that the world is overpopulated and it's subject to impending climate doom. In order to save the planet, we have to stop burning hydrocarbon fuels. That's what this net carbon emissions mean. It's all a scam. The Earth is not warming up because of carbon dioxide. The fundamental premise, which was the hockey puck, Michael Mann, another bogus climate scientist, rigged the data. We have the emails from the Climate Gate out of the East Anglia computer in London or Great Britain that shows Michael Mann, the other climate scientists attached to the UN's IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, rigged the data to argue that the Earth's temperature was just fine until we got to the industrial age. We started burning hydrocarbon fuels. And like the blade of a hockey stick, the temperature of the Earth heated up in a great accelerated pattern. It's not true. The Earth's had 4.6 billion years of geologic history. We've had mountains rise. We've had continents split apart. We've had 5 extinctions of almost everything on the Earth before human beings were ever here. It was not the little cavemen and their carbon fires in the caves, in Neolithic times, that caused the Ice Age to recede. It was because the Earth came away from its most elliptical point of view. It was most elliptical about 100,000 years ago when we had the Ice Age. So what Gates is realizing is that he's got to change his tune, because as more people see the climate change facade and realize their lives are being exploited by globalism, and that Bill Gates' intent is to destroy the middle class. His intent, these globalists are, to replace everybody with machines. UAW's on strike. And by the way, the federal government's now going to attack Amazon, try to break it up. It's like they're trying to break up cryptocurrency. I mean, the federal government, our bureaucracy is obsolete. It's got a bunch of bureaucrats who were never elected to anything coming out of these Georgetown schools that think that they are the law. They don't care about Congress. They make up their own rules in the bureaucracy. I think we should move the entire bureaucracy to Death Valley and let them have all the solar and wind they want. They can cool themselves in Quonset huts with their little wind turbines. Let them be happy out there. But they want everybody else to lose their energy. And across the world now, the UK is realizing that these net zero emissions are going to force the middle class to go broke. People have to replace heaters of oil-based or natural gas-based heaters with these new pumps that they want them to use, these net zero nonsense mechanisms, which is going to cost lots of money. Well, they don't have the money. The middle class doesn't have the money. And so the government says, well, we'll subsidize it. Well, that's inflation. This is insanity. It's like deregulating the police and being surprised that you've got riots going on in Philadelphia. Eventually, the adults are going to say, stop it. The adults are going to say to these Democrats, Mark Levin's already written a book, the Democrat Party hates America. Well, it is true. Okay, so basically you've got the poor and the working class are being looted by Bill Gates, who got these expensive climate policies. They want everybody to buy a $60,000 electric vehicle. They want everybody to have these lithium batteries that may cost $10,000 to replace. They do burn. The electric vehicles are not very practical. Finally, even our brilliant Secretary of Transportation, Buttigieg, however he says his name, I don't want to get into the more vulgar uses of his name, but you can figure that out yourselves. But Mr. Buttigieg is admitting that we don't have enough chargers around to support the electric vehicles we already have. And in some countries, they required Tesla to make their electric chargers so that they can charge any car, not just a Tesla. Electric vehicles are sitting on the lots unbought. Why? Because they don't work. It's pretty simple. It was a fad. And all these things we're in the middle of a great fad phenomenon. Now, the last thing I want to cover is that it's coming out that Fauci was smuggled into the CIA headquarters without a record of entry. This is coming from the House Select Committee on the coronavirus pandemic, which is now in the hands of the Republicans. And this is a letter from Representative Wenstrup, who's heading the panel. He is a Republican from Ohio, Brad Wenstrup, and he released documents saying that from a senior level CIA whistleblower that the agency tried to pay off 6 analysts who found SARS-CoV-2 likely originated from a Wuhan lab if they changed their position and said the virus jumped from animals to humans. According to the whistleblower, at the end of its review, 6 of the 7 members of the team believed the intelligence and science were sufficient to make a low-confidence assessment that COVID-19 originated from a laboratory in Wuhan. So that's probably the truth. What does the CIA do? It brings in Fauci, who's happy to lie for money. We now know that Fauci has been documented. Fauci and many others within NIH, after this law change, can receive royalties on pharmaceuticals that are produced on patents that they hold. It's another money scheme. And so the pharmaceutical companies got a chance to make a big payday and get all these bucks, inflated money, which they need a lot more of in order to sustain their standard of living at the high level they want it to be sustained at. And now we're giving the arms dealers and the arms manufacturers their payday in Ukraine. We are dealing with so much massive government money corruption, with all this money being printed, that literally America's going to hell, and it's probably going to hell pretty fast because we don't have adults in charge. We've got climate nonsense in charge. We've got Bill Gates allowed to run free. I mean, I'm questioning how much Bill Gates contributed to Microsoft. He certainly made a lot of money from it. But I'm going back and researching the roots of that and seeing how he really did get started and who was responsible for Microsoft's success. And I'm pretty sure you're not going to find Bill Gates at the top of the list. Let's wrap it up. Chris, do you have any final comments on today?
Well, I do want to point out to our listening and viewing audience to check out our website, thetruthcentral.com. In fact, you have a very interesting interview with Cheryl Chumley of the Washington Times on her podcast, Bold and Blunt. We'll have that put up here in just a moment. But if you have a chance, pop down here to the Truth Central website. You have it here. You break down the whole thing rather nicely with Cheryl. You can hear it on the Washington Times website as well, but it's really easy to catch it by just visiting our website, thetruthcentral.com. We do have some of your past media appearances here as well. We're going to be putting up more as everything grows.
Check out also the sponsors. I mean, my hair, I'm not coloring my hair. It's just coming back into a more natural color. I've been taking this My Vital C now for 4 or 5 years. It's one of our sponsors. Try it. The products are really, I'll swear by them. I've written a book I don't have it right here at the desk. I've written a book called Live Longer Better. We're going to have it up on the website here very quickly. And the whole point of this book is that this carbon-60, which is a remarkable molecule, it's only discovered about 40 years ago. And Chris Burries, who's my partner here, writing co-author in the book, was able to figure out how to produce carbon-60 for the scientists initially 40 years ago, and then ultimately how to make it so it can be consumed. It's even for pets, cats and dogs. It comes in for human beings. I like the olive oil solution of it. I take it every day. I think it's good for longevity. I think it's good for mental acuity, and it's had remarkable properties. It's antioxidant. I use the hair cream, and it's brought color back into my hair. I'm not coloring it. And the creams for the body these things are remarkable. This carbon-60 is a 60 it's a molecule that has 60 atoms, carbon atoms around a nucleus, and the binding of these atoms forms really like a cage structure, which looks like a soccer ball. It also looks like a Bucky Fulminster geodesic dome. So they call these fullerenes. And there's a lot of different structures of them. Some mean carbon-60 in another atomic structure is what's behind graphene, which is a remarkable, stronger than steel product that can conduct electricity. We're in a new age where we've got all this chaos going on, and a new age is trying to be born, and we're trying to decide whether this technology is going to serve human beings or whether the oligarchs who want to become kings again, they want to go back to the serfdom eras, are going to try to kill people. The official policy of the United States since Henry Kissinger, 1974, check out National Security Memorandum 200, is depopulation. It's called the Kissinger Report. I've been reporting on that. I know these are dark times, but I constantly say in the end, God always wins. God created this place. God can unplug it any day God wants to. We are living here a spiritual existence. We don't realize it. It looks physical, but it's a spiritual existence. And we're only here for a short while. And we're not meant to be here longer. This is a way station. And in the end, God will win because God rules. And the Lord's Prayer is that God's will be done here as it is in heaven. It should be done here. And the solution to this chaos and anarchy is 2 Chronicles 7:14. God gave us a solution. Get down on our knees and beg God for forgiveness, for allowing God to be taken out of the schools, out of our hearts, out of the godless society is not one anyone can live in. And we need to beg forgiveness for all the millions of babies who have killed in the womb. These are God's creations. These are living souls. We killed them. Left celebrates their death, passes laws to protect their being killed. These are great sins against God. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if we do this, if we repent, if we realize how we've allowed this to occur, we've made decisions that have produced this world, God will hear our prayer and heal our land. And enough of us join in this. Forget about John Lennon. Imagine this world without God, without borders. You're seeing what that world's like. Well, let's imagine the world without John Lennon. Let's imagine a world without John Lennon and with God. It's a much better formula. Jerome Corsi. Today is September 27th, 2023. It's Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow. We're broadcasting The Truth Central every day. If you like us, make sure you spread the word on social media. We want to grow this audience. I'm writing books. I'm back. chose not to retire. I'm back at it, and I'm going to be at it as actively as God allows me to be for the remainder of my life, God willing. Thank you for joining us, thetruthcentral.com. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.